From the very beginning of the game, we were told of an entity capable of ending the world, of bringing the darkness, the Roaring Knight, a creator of dark fountains who seeks only chaos. And almost since their introduction, theories have pointed to Rudy Holiday, or her mother, Carol, as the prime suspects. But what if Deltarune's antagonist was someone no one could have imagined? Someone the game's creator planned from the very beginning and, upon closer analysis, makes perfect sense. From the fact that only monsters with determination can open fountains, and how that same power destroys their bodies, leaving them sick or ending their existence, and how that connects to Rudy's mysterious illness, which seems to be getting worse and worse, not to mention Chris's secret alliance with the Knight, actively helping them escape, and how all this time, Carol Holiday has been a red herring, a perfect trap laid by Toby Fox himself. But what does all this lead to? Well, it leads us to a conclusion that seems almost impossible, yet fits perfectly with Toby Fox's twisted logic. The Roaring Knight is not a villain driven by pure evil, but someone with a very human motivation for being a monster. And to understand why this heartbreaking twist could be exactly what Toby Fox has planned, and how it could affect the end of the game, we must first examine the Knight in depth. Chapter 1. The Knight. From the very first chapter, a figure known as the Roaring Knight has been mentioned. They are the one who allegedly created the dark fountains that have been transforming various parts of Hometown, and this character is consistently mentioned by the main antagonists of chapters 1 through 3. Even the vendors we meet along the way offer useful tips about this mysterious villain. Their intentions remain unclear, but their actions have been shown to be harmful. Not only do they trap the inhabitants in dark worlds teeming with darkners who could hurt them, but they have also been shown to be capable of invoking the Roaring, the formation of a titan whose presence brings nothing but chaos and destruction. When we interview the King of Spades from his prison cell in chapter 4, he mentions that he never even saw the Knight's face. Instead, it was the jester, Jevil, who had that privilege, and it was through Jevil's words that the king was convinced to follow the Knight's will. Near the end of her chapter, Queen boasts that she knows how the Knight created their world, and that she wishes to follow their example to plunge the rest of the world into darkness. She remains unaware that this would trigger the Roaring and the end of the world, at least until Rousey explains it to everyone. Chapter 3 kicks off because Chris opens a dark fountain in their own living room. However, Tenna doesn't seem to recognize Chris as the one responsible. Near the end, just before our final confrontation, Tenna confesses that the Knight communicated with him directly. The Knight promised that if Tenna kept Toriel trapped and away from the main trio, he would get the massive audience he had always dreamed of. This motivated Tenna to distract Chris, Susie, and Rousey to prevent them from rescuing Toriel. Based on the Knight's appearance, like the antlers on their helmet, or the fact that some of their attacks resemble snowflakes, plus their battle taking place in a snowy area, the most popular theory is that their true identity is one of the holidays. Their family name, of course, is a direct reference to Christmas. This could mean Des, Noelle's sister who has yet to appear in the game, or, much more likely, her mother, Carol. She seems to be aware of the human soul within Chris and shows a particular interest in it. If we follow the weird route, she's the one who informs us that Noelle wants to see us at the festival the next day, possibly indicating she has some control or knowledge of what we're making Noelle do on this path, but that's a topic for another day. Another point to consider is that Chris and the Knight seem to share the same goals. In every opportunity we've had to confront the Knight, Chris prevents us from stopping them completely. During the fight, Chris deals the least amount of damage to them, even less than Rousey, which is especially suspicious considering Chris usually hits harder than him. However, this is only true if Rousey and Susie are still in the fight. If they fall, and Chris is left alone, their damage becomes much more significant. If you complete the fight without taking any damage, during the final turn, the following text appears. Chris coughs. The enemy slowly turned its head. This implies Chris fakes a cough to signal to the Knight that the player might not give up soon, and they need to end the fight. Later, in chapter 4, when the Knight blocks our path to the Sanctuary's fountain, if we manage to dodge their swords and reach them, Susie gets anxious when she sees Chris just standing there doing nothing. Eventually, we're all ejected back to the start of the area. And for one more piece of evidence of an alliance between Chris and the Knight, moments before the Knight summons the Titan, Susie tries to intimidate them, questioning why they keep running and declaring that they can't do anything to them in the light world. This makes the Knight laugh. mocking Susie. This could imply the Knight knows full well that Susie isn't safe as long as she's near Chris, who shares their intentions. Furthermore, at the end of chapter 3, Susie desperately tries to open the bunker. When she gives up, it seems to open right in front of Chris, but they choose to do nothing, letting Susie believe it was sealed shut. Now that we've gone over the Knight's implications in the plot, it's time to answer the question in this video's title. Why could Rudy be the Knight? At least in Toby's mind. While the theories pointing to Carol have a lot of solid evidence and could very well become canon, there's another crucial element we haven't discussed. Chapter 2, Determination. In Chapter 2, Queen explains that Lightners use their will, the power of determination, to create a dark fountain. While many people assume that monsters in Deltarune have blood, this appears to be false. In the light world across different chapters, there's a young rabbit NPC who constantly asks Chris what it's like to be human, what it feels like to be made of blood and bones. This statement, coming from a little monster child, implies that most monsters share the same properties established in Undertale. They don't have blood and they turn to dust when they die. However, this creates confusion because Susie clearly knows what blood is. She never questions it when it's mentioned, as if it's completely normal for her. She even recognizes a blood stain in Chris's room in chapter 4 and knows how to clean it easily. On top of that, Susie herself bleeds at the end of chapter 4. For some reason, Susie seems to be the only monster who bleeds besides Sans, but he's a whole other topic we won't mention today. This is highly relevant because she, Chris, and the Knight are the only ones who have been seen creating a dark fountain. But if all Lightners can do it, what's different here? And how does this relate to the Knight's identity? It will strictly establish in Undertale that monsters cannot handle determination in their bodies. When they're injected with it, they begin to melt until their bodies can't take it anymore and disintegrate. If we assume that monster biology works the same way across universes, it wouldn't make sense for all Lightners to be able to create fountains since it requires determination that they shouldn't be able to withstand. In the world of Undertale, when Dr. Alphys tested determination on dying monsters, who by the way are already deceased in Deltarune, they seem to temporarily stabilize and improve only to later melt and fuse together. But in the Deltarune universe, there was no war between humans and monsters, so there would be no reason to conduct experiments with determination, or would there? The Lightner who is opening the fountains, being unable to handle determination without a soul, could be suffering physical harm from its use, similar to what happened to Undyne the Undying. And which character do we know who is suffering from a mysterious illness? That's right, Chapter 3, Rudy Holiday. Rudy, Noelle's father, has been gravely ill since we began our adventure in Chapter 1. With each passing chapter, his condition progressively worsens and he uses what little strength he has left to not disappoint his loved ones before finally collapsing, barely able to communicate. If you ask him directly about his illness, he'll tell you the doctors can't figure out what's wrong with him. Think about it. A new dark fountain has opened in every chapter, and the voice that speaks to Chris through the phone at Noelle's house predicts the location of the next one, suggesting that this person is the Knight, or at least someone following the same plan as Chris and the Knight. After sealing the fountains in chapters 2 and 4, we're told a long person could have fit through a nearby door, implying the Knight hid there to open the fountain unseen. This not only suggests the Knight is tall, but also rolls out characters like Des, who isn't an adult yet. And let's be honest, Carol doesn't exactly seem towering. Furthermore, although Rudy attends church for a short time, he leaves quickly because, according to Toriel, he needs to rest, but almost immediately after he disappears, the Roaring Knight makes their move. It seems clear that while the Knight is active, Rudy's health declines, which fits with the evidence connecting blood and determination to the creation of dark fountains. This suggests that the character we'd least expect might actually be the mastermind behind it all. You can't blame the doctors for not knowing their patient moonlights as a dark fountain creator, an activity that severely weakens him because he can't handle determination. Narratively, Rudy is a perfect fit for the role of the Knight. What would be the point of seeing him bedridden and seemingly useless in every chapter otherwise? Wouldn't this be the exact kind of plot twist and revelation worthy of Toby Fox? It's very much a Toby Fox move to misdirect our attention with Carol, especially at the end of chapter 4 when we get a call from her with the exact same dialogue box as the Roaring Knight. In a normal game, this would be a major reveal, but knowing Toby Fox, it feels more like a perfectly laid trap to keep us from suspecting the Roaring Knight's true identity. A sick, seemingly harmless man who is only trying to... What is he trying to do? Why would Rudy, Rudolph Halliday, do all this? Why would he sacrifice his own life to potentially end the world? Well, this is the most ambiguous part, but it's not hard to deduce that it's directly related to Des' disappearance and the hints we've been given about Asgore and his former job as a police officer. Regarding Des, the logic would be almost the same as with Carol. Rudy wants to find his daughter. We don't know why, but she's lost in a dark world, in a place darker than dark, perhaps within the game's code itself, the only place we can find her voice lines. Maybe reaching that place requires triggering the roaring, the end of the world. This is further justified by what we see in Chapter 4. We can spy on Asgore cleaning the Holiday house, and if we let him talk to himself, he'll eventually start musing about proving something to everyone. He's constantly trying to win back Toriel, and when he fails, he tells himself he just wants things to be like they were before, with the family reunited when Azrael comes back from college. This theme of nostalgia and returning to a better past is a constant thread in many of Deltarune's storylines. It could be similar to the Holiday family situation with December's sudden disappearance. A fun fact here is that of all the characters, Susie is the only one who doesn't seem particularly interested in the past. In fact, she's the opposite, focused on enjoying her present, but we'll save that for a video dedicated to her. Getting back to Rudy, he's a great friend to Asgore, even though the former king apparently bears some guilt for Des' disappearance. It could be that deep down, seeing his family situation, like how Carol treats Noelle, Rudy simply wants things to be like they were before. He wants Des back, no matter what. However, there are many other clues in the air about the Knight's intentions that leave us with questions, particularly why they need Toriel, Undyne, and Carol. But that's for a video specifically about the Knight, not this one trying to unravel their identity, or at least the one Toby Fox likely intended. But before we end the video and conclude that Rudy is definitely the Roaring Knight trying to save Des, we have to ask, why not Carol? During Chris's phone call with the strange voice in the kitchen, the voice says it will be right there just as Susie is holding Des' guitar, which contains the bunker's password, further linking the bunker to Des. Shortly after, Carol arrives. This is one of the strongest, if not the strongest, pieces of evidence for Carol being the Knight. It can't be a coincidence that Carol shows up to take the guitar right after the Knight is told Susie has it, unless the voice on the phone isn't the Knight's at all. The entire theory of Carol being the Knight is based mostly on the assumption that the voice from the call, the one with the distorted text and black dialogue box, belongs to the Knight, but this has never been confirmed. It could very well be Carol herself using a distorted voice to avoid suspicion for some reason. And as we said before, it could easily be a red herring from Toby to make us believe Carol is the Knight. This doesn't mean she isn't connected to them in some way, but she doesn't seem to be following the same plan as Chris. Carol seems to like Chris's presence, or rather the soul's presence, and apparently forced interactions between Noelle and Chris when they were younger. So it's possible she knows a lot about the prophecy and wants it to come to pass, even at her daughter's expense. Meanwhile, she despises Susie and doesn't want her anywhere near Noelle. This implies Carol wants to bring about the weird route. In contrast, Rudy seems to like that Susie and Noelle are friends, so much so that when we do the weird route, he chooses to speak with Susie privately, avoiding Chris, or rather the player, to talk about things Noelle likes. It's strange. It's as if Carol and Rudy both know what the soul can do, but one is in for it and the other is against it, as if one, Carol, represents the weird route where we sacrifice Noelle to fulfill the prophecy, and the other, Rudy, as in the Roaring Knight, wants the normal route to succeed, where, thanks to Susie, we prevent the prophecy from coming true. And I think this is, and will be, the key to Deltarune's future. Maybe Carol wants to save Des, her favorite daughter, by sacrificing Noelle, and who knows, maybe the entire world in the process. And Rudy, although he also wants to rescue Des, isn't willing to sacrifice his other daughter and is looking for another way. That said, I'd like to mention that this theory, even though I've had it in mind almost since the chapter came out, has always seemed and still seems a little crazy to me, because all the clues do point to Carol as the one wearing the mantle of the Roaring Knight. However, that's why the video is titled Why Toby Fox Wanted Rudy to be the Roaring Knight, because I believe that if we put ourselves in the shoes of the creator of Undertale and Deltarune, few things would make more sense. It's a plot twist worthy of Toby. So yes, this isn't just a theory validated by clues, though there's some of that too, but one based on what the game's creator is famous for doing. And believe me, that guy is pretty wild. So don't forget to comment what you think, and if you believe Toby is crazy enough to make Rudy the Roaring Knight. I'll be reading.